Not the case that they're freedom fighters. The first thing that Hamas did when they were allegedly elected was to kill their co-religionists in the Gaza, was to throw people off buildings, to shoot people in the back when they're running away. This is what the Hamas do to their own co-religionists in the Gaza, to other Palestinians. So the first thing is that Hamas not only inflict terror on the people of Israel, they also inflict it on other Palestinians. It's for the Palestinian peoples, as the rabbi said, to try to overthrow this terrorist organization. An organization which fights, if I may just finish. Well, an organization which fulfills every...
Come off it.
Well, I don't know what else you call an organization which has killed hundreds of it.
What was the Irgun? What was the Haganah?
Well, the Irgun and the Haganah are not operating at the moment.
No, but what were they?
Well, they were terrorist organizations at the time. But I would say that we're talking about what's happening at the present. And the present situation is that Israel builds bunkers in which its civilians have to shelter from rocket fire from the Hamas. The Hamas builds bunkers and hides its rockets in it, and then puts civilians on top of those bunkers. That is a terrorist organization.
That is an organization that has no respect.
That is an organization that has no respect for human lives, not Palestinian lives and not Israeli lives.
F-16s?
Mahmoud, you know people in the Gaza. In Taj Hage, I mean... Barack Obama said this. He said if someone was sending rockets into my house, where my two daughters sleep at night, I'm going to do everything in my power to stop that, and I would expect Israelis to do the same thing.
I mean, that's quite true, but the point is we need to understand how the situation has come about. We seem obsessed with the current situation. We need to understand how Israel came into being. You know, we can debate here from now until doomsday about what's happening today, but we need to understand what has created the situation. How many of us know about the Hussein McMahon correspondence? How many of us know about the Sykes-Picot Agreement? How many of us know about the Balfour Declaration? All of them are duplicitous agreements that brought about the state of Israel.
But we are where we are.
Yeah, and to call Hamas a terrorist organization, what is the Stalag, the Irgun and the Haganah? How many of us know this? You see, we only know one side of the narrative. It's easy for people to say that Hamas is a terrorist organization, yet they were democratically elected. I might not like that. In fact, I don't agree with Hamas a lot of the time, but I cannot say they're just terrorists. How come one person's terrorist and another person's freedom fighter?
Andrew Murray?
Well, it's not the case that they're freedom fighters. The first thing that
of course, to try and understand the other side's position, because that's the only way we're ever going to get anywhere. Can you understand the Israeli position?
I don't understand the Israeli position because they are causing so much carnage and bloodshed at the moment that is completely disproportionate for what they are claiming to achieve.
Okay, Rabbi Shaikh, could you... And Peter, I'll bring you in a second. Could you, as calmly as you can, explain to Mahmoud again your position?
I would only ask you, because I've heard this bantered about for so long, what constitutes a proportionate response? In other words, if they spend the last 3 years throwing 6,000 rockets into Israel, would you consider a proportionate response for Israel dropping 6,000 missiles back into Gaza, and however many may be killed in the process, then so be it? I wonder what the UN would have to say to that.
Well, Rabbi Shaikh is...
Just a few points that need to be brought up here. You know, Douglas Murray talked about that this was supposedly a democratically free elected, just like we have in the West, elected, that Hamas, put up their candidates. They had debates. They went back and forth. Everything was perfectly fine. And then they were voted in democratically by the people of Palestine. No coercion, no stuffing of ballots, nothing like that. It was all politically on the up and up. But then once they got into power, they threw their opposition off of buildings in many cases, murdered them, shot them, jailed them, beat them, and did away with any opposition. So whatever opposition was left there, Palestinians, they have no guns. The men, women, and children there, they have no guns. They're basically throwing stones. They put the fear into the people, saying, do not go against us. What are you going to do? And then the rabbi asks a great question, which everybody is. What is a proportionate response? So you lob 6,000 missiles in. Okay, you miss. What is this? Are we playing, Battleship? Where, you shout out the coordinates, and if you hit, you say you missed or hit. So you lobbed 1,000+ missiles you hit some things, but not a lot of damage. We lob our missiles back. We cause a lot of damage, a lot of collateral damage. Unfortunately, a lot of civilian deaths occur. And now you say, oh, that's what? Is that a proportionate response? Or are we only talking numbers? Every death, every person who becomes a casualty, a victim of war is devastating to those that, obviously to the families and the people that are around there. But this, again, throw this proportionality question is, why does Hamas start in the first place? They know that that's what they want, folks. They want that proportionality response to be disproportionate in the world's eyes. They know that when Israel launches their counterattack, thousands of their Gazans and the people who live in the West Bank and the Palestinians, they're going to die. They know this. Hamas knows this. But they're using the casualties. They're using the suffering of the war. They're using the collateral damage to try to make a point with the world looking on and saying, Israel, they're the evil people. Look at what the Jewish people are doing. Look at what the government of Israel is doing. They are killing our people and we didn't do anything. They're just bombing the crap out of us, and that's all that's going on. Folks, it's until Hamas surrenders and lays down its arms and takes out of its charter that the complete wipeout, the complete termination, the extermination, the extinction of the Jewish people in the state of Israel, nothing is going to be solved there. It's just, you can't negotiate with terrorists when they're not only putting a gun to your head, they're putting the cannon, they're putting, the tank, they're putting the battleship, they're putting the nuclear, bomb against you. You just can't negotiate with these people when those are the conditions are still on the table. Anyways, let's continue with this discussion.
So many myths and so many misinformation about what's really happening on the ground. Hamas was agreed to a ceasefire for the last 6 months before the outbreak of the recent violence, and no rockets were fired at Israel. Israel has recently engineered a situation in which it forced Hamas to shoot rockets at Israel.
And you're talking to me about myths.
And Israel have done in the last 6 months. In the last 6 months, can I continue?
Well, these guys are just.
So this guy, the Palestinian gentleman, is saying that Israel somehow did something that caused somebody to shoot rockets into Israel. So you say some words or some policies that enacted, and now your proportionate response to words and policies is launching rockets. That's what this Palestinian man is basically trying to say. You can't have it both ways, sir. You can't have it both ways.
Disturbed by something you just said, and it behoves me to actually ask why.
First of all, rockets continued to come during the ceasefire from groups, not just Hamas, but Islamic Jihad. Second of all, Hamas ended the ceasefire, and before Israel went into Gaza last week, they fired hundreds of missiles back into Israel. The Israeli people have suffered for the last 5 to 8 years with thousands of missiles being fired onto their towns.
In the last
500 rockets from Hamas over the last week as well.
Only 16 Israelis were killed in
only 16.
18. It's of course it is sad when one person is killed, but we have here proportions. 16 Israelis are killed in the 8 years. We have 4,000 people, Palestinians, are killed on the Gaza Strip by the Israeli missiles and by Israeli assassination squads.
I just wonder. Robert, you are from the
Israeli assassination squads. Nothing about the Hamas assassination squads or the Hamas suicide bombers. Nothing about that.
Conservative friends of Israel. I'm putting this to you, Peter Hitchens. This is a difficult time for friends of Israel, capital F and small f, isn't it?
It's a very difficult time. Partly, because of the very second-rate nature of the political leadership in Israel at the moment. The problem with this action, apart from the very large numbers of innocent people who are getting killed in it, is that it isn't actually likely to achieve the aim set out for it. If I thought that Israel actually had a serious plan for stopping the rocket attacks on Sderot and other Israeli towns, then I'd find a lot more sympathy in my heart for the action. What this is about, I'm afraid, is sordid electoral politics in Israel and the desire of various politicians to get themselves spurious reputations as hardliners. 6 months from now, there will still be rockets being fired from Gaza into Israel. Despite this operation, once this is all over, it will continue to happen. If it were...
And 14 years later, and even in between, this has continued. So his point right now being made is that this is not a long-term solution to this short-term situation that occurred with the rockets being launched in there. And the disproportionality of the attacks is only causing Israel to be looked at in a very bad light by other nations around the world when they see the death and destruction and devastation that's being caused. And then the word proportionality keeps popping up. And then his opinion is that this is where some people within the Israeli government are trying to get their bona fides by saying, look at what we did. We are strong and we are standing together against the Hamas terrorist groups, and we will do whatever is necessary to rid Hamas from continuing to, throw rockets into our area, to continue to threaten the Jewish people and the Jewish nation, and we will do whatever we need to do to get this done. Hitchens just thinks this policy in the long term is a losing policy.
If it were a serious operation to stop this, if such a thing could be contemplated, there'd be more to be said for it. But it's disproportionate, not because of the level of arms involved, but because it simply doesn't have anything to do with its alleged aim.
Well, okay,
that's the real problem Israel has.
Douglas, I think I called you Andrew earlier, and I apologise for that. You have the stature of a tennis player, clearly. But how can this do anything but strengthen the Hamas position, not only in the region, but across the whole Arab world? They've all of a sudden, look at the march yesterday with thousands of people there, with Hamas, I think it was 12,000 people, Hamas posters, people like Alexei Sayle and...
As I said before, folks, this happened back in 2009, and those are the marches back then. We fast forward 14 years now, and look at the marches that we saw, tens of thousands of people all across Europe in major cities, here in the United States, on college campuses. Look at the similarities, but it just seems that it has grown in intensity.
Annie Lennox marching alongside people with Hamas posters, and all of a sudden they're sort of heroic freedom fighters.
Really?
They've been strengthened.
Do you think Hamas or Annie Lennox become heroic freedom fighters, or Alexei Sayle needs to tell you what's right and wrong in the world?
Your problem is this, if I may interject just a moment, your problem is this, that the very, very foolish and unbalanced ideas, a gentleman over there enunciated one of them just now, that Israel in this conflict is Goliath and the Arabs are David, when Israel, in fact, has about, 2% of the land mass of the Middle East and about the same population. This idea that Israel is the aggressive bully is created in the public mind. This war is not going to be won by rockets. It's not going to be won by tanks. It's being won or lost on the television screens of the world. If Israel loses the support of the peoples of Europe and North America, which is in grave danger of doing, then Israel will lose the war.
I just want to say this thing. Here I believe that Hitchens was completely wrong, because although there are governments and entities out there, and this always happens whenever you look at and see that there's a larger entity, a larger country that has more resources, more power, whatever you want to call it, they have more of. And then you've got a smaller entity, a smaller group of people that are looked as if that they don't have anything. That disproportionality is always going to exist. The question becomes what happens. Now, as far as in the West, there have been organizations and political parties that absolutely have taken the Palestinian side. But I don't think, in my opinion, by any means, has Israel lost the support of Western European nations. They certainly haven't lost the support of the United States. They haven't lost the support of Great Britain. I don't believe they've lost the support of, some other countries too. Maybe in the background from some of those countries, but they certainly aren't basically coming out and saying it immediately. And I'm talking about the Western democracies. Anyways, let's continue.
Douglas Murray.
When Israel risks, like in 2006, having 1 million of its civilians having to live under threat of rocket fire, this is something which should be beyond its concern about what European governments think or don't think. You mentioned earlier about the huge number of civilian casualties. I can't think of another situation in war in which a fifth of casualties are civilian, and in which the Hamas have suffered up till now perhaps as many as 400 casualties. 400 terrorists being killed seems to me to be good work. It's good work for the future of Israel. It's good work for the future of the region.
Upwards of 75 children have been killed. You can't call them terrorists.
No, I didn't call them terrorists. I said they were innocent civilians. But that 4 times that number of people being killed, the targeted people being killed, are terrorists, and they have been killed. And that can only be good for the region. It can only be good for Israeli security. And if the Arab world really cares about the Palestinian peoples, why doesn't it do something for them practical instead of whining about this tiny slither of land which Israel occupies? Why don't they realise that if there's going to be peace in the region, it relies on there being a Palestinian solution and it relies on there being an Israeli solution? That can happen, but the first thing that has to happen is that the Arab governments and the Palestinians realise that Israel isn't going anywhere. If they made that realisation, why would they be firing rockets into Israel proper? This isn't disputed territory. They're firing rockets into Israel. Why are they doing that?
I know
we have to look at the...
Wow. Another very spirited debate. Opinions flying back and forth. Douglas Murray doing his thing. Peter Hitchens is there. They had a couple of people from the Muslim Center in UK, Palestinian gentlemen, all giving their opinions. I don't think anybody giving an inch at all. I don't think anything was solved or any minds were changed here. But at least it's a dialogue that is out there in the beginning. And as I said before, this is 14 years ago. You wind together and you put these back to back and you're going, am I just watching something that just occurred yesterday? In essence, you can think that. Anyways, folks, we appreciate you taking the time to watch. You've been watching the Dr. Nasir Shaikh Show. I've been your host, Dr. Nasir. And if you haven't done so already, we'd love for you to subscribe to the channel if we've earned it. Like, share, and follow us. You know what to do. Check out our other links above and below. My final thought is always, when you're right, and when you're left, you're wrong. Until next time, folks, take care and stay safe.